Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we will be discussing liberalism, which is a very prominent viewpoint in the United States. As usual, I will be using unbiased, logical points and conclusions. However, later in the video I will also bring up ethically and morally driven points, which do come from my personal perspective. All that aside, let's get right into the discussion. In its raw definition, the word liberal just means of the free or pertaining to that which is free. However, over the years this word has been used more as a shortened form of the term modern liberalism, which has a different meaning. Modern liberalism's appeal is that it supports equality, civil liberty, and social justice. This does sound good, equality of the people. However, there is an underlying fact that most documents of modern liberalism fail to explain. It is that modern liberalism uses a concept called relativism, also an extremely common viewpoint. The definition of relativism is as follows. The doctrine that there are no absolute truths, and all truth is relative to the circumstances. This is what so many people believe to be true, and what so many people wish to be true. However, people don't realize what it could result in. I know you all have heard people say things like, "That's your truth. Just do what you think is right, or follow your heart." Firstly, saying there are no absolute truths would be an absolute truth, a fact that always remains to be. Obviously, this is, in and of itself, a contradiction. Secondly, if there were no absolute truths, education, scientific studies, and anything information-based would be useless. Because if anything can be the truth according to each person's preference, then in the subjects I mentioned, you would only be learning one of the many truths. So why would anyone want to learn them if sitting at home and watching TV would be just as useful to gain truths as going to school? Before you give me reasons why that would not be healthy or would be lazy or anything else you may have to say, just remember that that would just be your truth. It might not be somebody else's. Third, if there were no absolute truths, law and order would be irrelevant, as anything that may be looked at as wrong by one person may be perfectly fine in another person's truth. For instance, walking into a school with a weapon and harming countless people with said weapon could just be that person's truth. The world would be without order and ethics would not exist. These are just a few examples of what could result in a country governed by relativism. Now we will be discussing the philosophers who were the predecessors to liberalistic viewpoints. Friedrich Nietzsche was a 19th century philosopher who was one of the earliest to support and develop modern liberalism. He also was one of the founders of what is known as existentialism, which is the alternate side of the liberalistic viewpoint. Rather than claiming there are no absolute truths, it claims that there is no absolute reality. This is a development and inevitable result of a liberalistic viewpoint. Nietzsche's most famous quote was, of course, "God is dead." This is now quite a prominent ideology which denies the existence of God. As a result of Nietzsche being anti-theistic and anti-religious, he sought out a way to get rid of it altogether. He felt this way about religion because if there was no God, then there was no responsibility to anyone but ourselves. His hate of God clearly shows in all of his philosophy, such as the 4 things he suggested above all, which are the following: own up to envy, don't be a Christian, never drink alcohol, and God is dead. Now seeing these, we can conclude that it was more specifically the idea of Christianity he hated, as so many people in the past have as well. So this is where my personal belief enters into the conversation. I believe that there is a God and that the God is the one of the Bible. Now any of you who do not believe this, just pretend for a moment that you do. If Nietzsche specifically denied Christianity above all other religions, and if Christian beliefs are true, then what does that tell us about Nietzsche? After all, he used to be an acclaimed Christian in his early years, but turned away from his beliefs in order to apparently find his own truth, which is exactly what his philosophy suggests you do as well. If there is no God and no absolute truth, who or what is there to stop you from doing whatever you want without consequence? The answer is no one, and Nietzsche knew this to be true. If we just step back and listen to what existentialism and liberalism claims, its reliability becomes clear. The claim that there is no such thing as something being false, so long as you believe it to be true, and that would mean that nothing is wrong so long as you proclaim it to be right. Now that we've heard it bluntly, does this sound like the sort of freedom that you want in your country? Well, that is up to you, the viewer, to decide. I have laid out my points, and now you must decide if they are accurate. I understand that there are other aspects of liberalism, however, these are the main aspects. I hope you found this video useful in understanding how modern liberalism really works. With that, I'll see you in the next video.